You won't believe what happened when a 26-year-old university dropout decided to pull off one of Kenya's most sophisticated cyber heists in history. 11.4 million shillings. Vanished in a single day. 38 transactions. All executed in perfect silence. And the mastermind? A young man working from a 2-bedroom apartment in Tatu City. But here's the twist. The very system he thought was untraceable became the digital footprint that led investigators straight to his door. This is the shocking true story of Seth Mwabe, and the loophole that brought down his entire operation. August 30th, 2025. The sun rose over Tatu City, one of Nairobi's most modern residential developments, where luxury apartments house Kenya's young professionals and ambitious entrepreneurs. Among these residents was a young man named Seth Mwabe. To his neighbors, he appeared to be just another tech-savvy youth, perhaps running a small online business or working remotely for some international company. But inside apartment number, well, let's just say his unit, something far more sinister was unfolding. Behind closed doors, Mwabe had transformed his humble 2-bedroom apartment into what investigators would later describe as a fully equipped cyber laboratory. High-end computers lined the walls, multiple monitors displayed streams of data, specialized software hummed quietly in the background. And on this particular morning, as most Kenyans prepared for another ordinary day, a team of detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigation's Banking Fraud Unit were preparing to knock on Mwabe's door. They had been tracking him for weeks. They had evidence, they had warrants, and they were about to uncover one of the most elaborate betting company hacks in Kenyan history. But how did a university dropout manage to siphon millions from one of Kenya's most secure payment systems? And more importantly, what was the critical mistake that led to his capture? Stay with me, because the answers will shock you. To understand how Seth Mwabe ended up in handcuffs, we need to go back to where it all began. Seth Mwabe was born and raised in Kenya, a bright young man with an obvious aptitude for technology. Like many of his generation, he grew up in an era where the internet was transforming everything, from how we communicate, to how we do business, to how we entertain ourselves. When he enrolled at Meru University to study information technology, his family had high hopes. Here was a young man with potential, pursuing a degree that promised a stable career in Kenya's growing tech sector. But something happened during his second year. Mwabe made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his entire life. He dropped out. Now, dropping out of university isn't inherently a red flag. Some of the world's most successful tech entrepreneurs never finished their degrees. Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, the list goes on. But for Mwabe, leaving university wasn't about pursuing a legitimate startup or building the next big app. According to investigators, this is when Mwabe began to explore the darker corners of the internet. He started learning about cybersecurity, not to protect systems, but to understand how to breach them. He studied vulnerabilities in payment platforms. He analyzed security protocols. He joined online forums where hackers shared techniques and tools. And he began to call himself a cybersecurity consultant. On paper, it sounded legitimate. Cybersecurity is a booming industry after all. Companies around the world are desperate for experts who can protect them from digital threats. But Mwabe wasn't interested in protection. He was interested in exploitation. And that's when he discovered something that would change everything. He found a vulnerability, a loophole, a crack in the armor of one of Kenya's most trusted payment service providers. But that's not all. Wait till you hear what Mwabe did next. Because what he was about to execute wasn't just a simple hack. It was a meticulously planned operation that would exploit human error, bypass multiple security systems, and remain completely undetected for weeks. Stay with me, because the details of this heist will leave you speechless. July 16th, 2025. This was the day Seth Mwabe decided to execute his plan. The target? Afrisen Money Transfer Limited, a payment service provider that handled transactions for some of Kenya's biggest betting companies, including the popular platform Betika. Now here's where things get interesting. According to the formal complaint filed by Afrosend, 38 unauthorized transactions were carried out on that single day. 38 separate transfers, all moving money out of the system and into an account at Diamond Trust Bank. The total amount? 11,410,165 shillings. Let that sink in for a moment. 11.4 million shillings. Stolen in one day. But how did he do it? This is where the story gets truly fascinating because Mwabe's success wasn't just about technical skill. It was about understanding the human element of cybersecurity. According to sources familiar with the investigation, Mwabe allegedly exploited human error. He may have used social engineering tactics to deceive a system administrator. Perhaps he posed as a legitimate IT support person. Perhaps he created a fake emergency scenario. Perhaps he sent a convincing phishing email that appeared to come from company management. Whatever the method, the result was devastating. He allegedly gained access to internal credentials. He bypassed monitoring systems. He opened a back door into the payment platform. And then, with surgical precision, he executed his 38 transactions through the PesaLink system, a platform designed to facilitate seamless bank-to-bank transfers across Kenya. The beauty of his approach, from a criminal perspective, was its subtlety. He didn't try to steal everything at once. He didn't trigger obvious alarms by attempting a single massive transfer. Instead, he spread the theft across multiple transactions, each one individually small enough to potentially slip under the radar. But here's the thing about modern financial systems. They might not catch you immediately, but they always leave a trail. And that trail was about to lead straight back to Tatu City. The transactions went through. The money moved. And for a brief moment, Seth Mwabe probably thought he had pulled off the perfect crime. But back at Afrosend Money Transfer Limited, something wasn't right. Their internal audit systems, though initially bypassed, eventually flagged the anomalies. Accountants noticed discrepancies, security teams were alerted, and within days, a formal complaint was filed with law enforcement. The letter was dated July 25, 2025, just 9 days after the heist, and it landed on the desk of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations Banking Fraud Unit, a specialized team trained to track down exactly this kind of cybercrime. The hunt for Seth Mwabe had officially begun. Now, let me tell you something crucial about modern cybercrime. No matter how sophisticated the hacker, no matter how careful they think they've been, they always leave traces. Digital breadcrumbs, electronic signatures, metadata that can be analyzed and traced. And Seth Mwabe was no exception. The DCI Banking Fraud Unit began their investigation by analyzing the 38 transactions. They examined timestamps. They tracked IP addresses. They followed the money trail through the banking system. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to build a profile of their suspect. The transactions had all been routed through specific servers. The money had been deposited into a particular Diamond Trust Bank account, and that account had identifying information attached to it. But here's where investigators found the critical loophole. The very same digital system that Mwabe had used to execute his heist became the tool that would unmask him. You see, the PesaLink platform, while sophisticated, maintains detailed logs of every transaction. Every transfer has a digital signature. Every account interaction is recorded. Every login is time-stamped. And when investigators analyzed these logs, they found something interesting. Access patterns that didn't match normal authorized user behavior. Login timestamps that corresponded with the fraudulent transactions. And most damning of all, digital fingerprints that led back to a specific location. Tatu City, a 2-bedroom apartment, Seth Mwabe's residence. But investigators didn't rush in immediately. They were methodical. They wanted to ensure they had enough evidence for a solid arrest and prosecution. They secured warrants. They coordinated with banking authorities. They built their case, brick by brick. And according to some reports, They even used Telegram to trace some of Moab's communications. The popular messaging app, while encrypted, isn't completely anonymous when law enforcement has the proper warrants and cooperation from service providers. The net was closing, and Muabe had no idea. For weeks, he went about his life, presumably enjoying his ill-gotten gains, believing he had outsmarted the system. But on August 30th, 2025, reality came knocking. But wait, you haven't heard the most shocking part yet. Because what investigators found inside Muabe's apartment wasn't just evidence of one crime. It was evidence of an entire operation, a cyber laboratory that suggested this wasn't his first rodeo. Keep watching, because what comes next will blow your mind. August 30th, 2025, early morning. The DCI banking fraud unit arrived at Tattoo City with warrants in hand and a clear objective: apprehend Seth Moab and secure all evidence related to the 11.4 million shilling heist. The knock on the door must have sent a chill down Moab's spine. When the door opened, detectives didn't just find a young man with a laptop, they found a full-scale cyber operations center. According to investigators, Muabe's two-bedroom apartment had been transformed into what resembled a professional hacker's dream setup. High-end computers, far more powerful than what a casual user would need, were positioned throughout the space. Multiple monitors displayed various programs and interfaces. Specialized software used by both hackers and cybersecurity professionals was installed across multiple systems. But it wasn't just the computers that caught the investigators' attention. They found a safe. They found a money-counting machine. Yes, an actual machine designed to count large quantities of cash. They found multiple mobile phones likely used for different aspects of his operation or to maintain anonymity across various platforms. And they found an array of high-end computer gadgets and equipment that, according to the DCI, had facilitated not just this heist, but potentially others as well. The evidence was overwhelming. Seth Moab was placed under arrest on the spot. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. You see, in Kenya, as in many countries, suspects have rights. They're entitled to legal representation. They're entitled to due process. And they're entitled to a bail hearing. On September 1st, 2025, just 2 days after his arrest, Moab was arraigned at the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi. The prosecution was aggressive. They requested that Moab be detained for 20 days to allow for further investigations under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. They argued that he was a flight risk. They argued that he might tamper with evidence. They argued that he posed a continued threat to digital systems. The defense, however, countered these arguments. And on September 3rd, 2025, Magistrate Ben Mark Ekubi made a ruling that surprised many observers. He released Seth Moab on bond. The amount? 500,000 shillings. The magistrate ruled that the detectives had failed to provide adequate grounds to continue holding the suspect. Despite the seriousness of the charges, despite the amount of money allegedly stolen, the court determined that bail was appropriate. The public reaction was intense. When news of Seth Moab's arrest and subsequent release on bond hit social media, Kenyans had a lot to say. And the responses were complicated. Some were outraged that someone accused of stealing millions could walk free on such a relatively small bond amount. 500,000 shillings might sound like a lot to the average person, but it's a fraction of the 11.4 million he allegedly stole. But others, and this is where it gets interesting, others had a different perspective. Some Kenyans actually praised Moab's technical skills. Comments flooded social media saying things like, "Employ him," and "He should be working for the government, not prosecuted by them." This reaction reflects a broader truth about cybersecurity in the modern world. The same skills that make someone a dangerous hacker are exactly the skills that companies and governments desperately need to protect their systems. It's a fine line between black hat and white hat, between criminal and consultant. But beyond the public's fascination with Moab's technical abilities, his case exposed something far more troubling: vulnerabilities in Kenya's digital infrastructure. You see, Kenya has positioned itself as a leader in digital innovation in Africa. M-Pesa revolutionized mobile money. Betting platforms have become a multi-billion shilling industry. Digital payments are increasingly the norm rather than the exception. But with this rapid digital transformation comes risk. The Moab case demonstrated that even major payment service providers, companies that handle millions of shillings every day, companies that serve some of Kenya's biggest businesses, are vulnerable to exploitation. According to cybersecurity experts who analyzed the case, the breach wasn't just about Moab's technical prowess. It was about systemic weaknesses, inadequate employee training, insufficient monitoring systems, over-reliance on digital platforms without robust backup security measures. One system administrator, whether through deception, coercion, or simple human error, allegedly provided access that led to millions in losses. That's a system failure, not just an individual failure. And it raises urgent questions. How many other young hackers are out there right now, probing Kenya's digital systems for vulnerabilities? How many other betting companies, banks, mobile money platforms, and e-commerce sites have weaknesses waiting to be exploited? And what is being done to address these threats? The Mwabe case is a wake-up call. But here's the thing. Seth Mwabe's story isn't over. As of now, he faces serious charges. Unauthorized access to computer systems, intent to commit further offenses, theft. If convicted, he could face up to 20 years in prison. 20 years. For a 26-year-old man, that's essentially a life sentence. His entire 30s and 40s behind bars. But the legal process will take time. There will be hearings. There will be evidence presented. There will be arguments about the strength of the prosecution's case and the legitimacy of the defense as counter-arguments. And throughout it all, the question remains. What drove Seth Mwabe to make these choices? Was it desperation? Was it greed? Was it the thrill of outsmarting the system? Was it a misguided belief that he wouldn't get caught? Or was it something else entirely? We may never know the full truth, but what we do know is this. The digital age has created opportunities that previous generations could never have imagined. Young people with technical skills can build companies, create innovations, and change the world from their laptops. But those same skills can be weaponized, and the consequences, as Seth Mwabe is now discovering, can be devastating. So what's the lesson here? The hunt for Seth Mwabe teaches us several crucial things about our digital world. First, no system is completely secure. No matter how sophisticated the encryption, no matter how advanced the monitoring, human error remains the weakest link in any security chain. Second, digital crimes always leave traces. Mwabe thought he had covered his tracks, but the very system he exploited became the evidence that convicted him. Third, Kenya, and indeed Africa as a whole, needs to invest heavily in both cybersecurity infrastructure and in channeling young technical talent toward legitimate opportunities. How many potential Seth Mwabes are out there right now trying to decide between using their skills for good or for illegal gain? And finally, the justice system faces a complex challenge. How do you balance punishment with potential rehabilitation? How do you deter future crimes while acknowledging that these same hackers possess skills that society desperately needs? Seth Mwabe's case is far from over. His trial will likely take months, possibly years. The evidence will be examined, witnesses will testify, and eventually a verdict will be reached. But regardless of that outcome, his story will remain a cautionary tale, a reminder that in the digital age, every action leaves a footprint. Every transaction creates a record. Every breach creates a trail. And eventually, that trail leads back to its source. The loophole that Seth Mwabe exploited to steal 11.4 million shillings became the same loophole that exposed him, tracked him down, and brought him to justice. It's a perfect example of digital karma, if you will. The system he tried to outsmart ultimately outsmarted him. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the hunt for Seth Mwabe. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth investigations into the stories shaping Kenya and Africa. What do you think about Seth Moabe's case? Should he face the full 20 years if convicted? Or should his technical skills be redirected toward helping companies improve their security? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you want to see more content like this, exploring the intersection of technology, crime, and justice in modern Africa, click that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, in the digital world, nothing ever truly disappears.